Pieter van Wyk is here from South Africa. And a lot of speakers we have are an expert on one plant group or another. But Pieter's focus really is on a place, and that place is the Richtersveld. So on the west coast of South Africa, which is the winter rainfall region, down at the south you have Cape Town, which has very high rainfall. And as you go north from Cape Town, the rainfall gets less and less. When it gets to be quite low rainfall, you get to the Namaqualand area. And then at the very top, where it's the least, is the Richtersveld. So that's the border with Namibia, right by the Orange River. And it is a place of extraordinary diversity and extraordinary natural beauty. And Pieter was raised there and started a nursery specializing in the plants of the Richtersveld. And he's going to share some of his wonderful photographs with us of this remarkable part of the world. Pieter?
Thank you. So it's is the sound right? I'm still struggling with my ears after 36 hours in a plane. And I arrived yesterday, and I had a night that lasted 22 hours of darkness. So my body is quite confused what's going on. And I went from scorching hot desert to the lovely cool temperatures of San Francisco. So that's also a big adjustment, but it's such a great privilege and honor to be here. And I want to thank you, the societies, for inviting me to come to America. It's my first time in America. And to meet Mr. Brian in person, it's really been awesome today, spending time with his collections. So really thank you so much. So I want to share or start with a small video that's only 5 minutes. It's not narrated before I go to my presentation. And this video, what it is about, it's about showing the beauty, the vastness, the greatness, and the biodiversity of my region or my part of the world called the Richtersveld. But then it ends with a little bit of a negative side, and that's the reality of what climate change is doing to my part of the world, which is the mecca for succulents in the world. The Richtersveld's got the highest percentage of the world's succulents. So more than 4% of all succulent plants on Earth occurs in this tiny little spot on the planet. But it's disappearing. And then also the need for minerals, diamonds, diamond mining, and heavy earth minerals, the need for energy in Europe, in Asia, and India, and these places, the demand for resources is absolutely destroying this area. And this video ends with showing you just a little blink of what's happening in this beautiful pod. So if our technical person, sorry, I forgot your name. John. And then, excuse my English, so we do speak British English. And there's some words that's different, and my home language is Afrikaans, and it's common in South Africa that you at least have to speak 3 languages. If you don't speak 3 languages, it's very difficult to get along. But yeah, so I want to share this little video with you. Thank you. So this was made by Dr. Francois Orendahl. He put the video especially for me together. And I'm very thankful for him for that. And I had to show this because my presentation I'm going to give, I think I must stand on top here. So you can go to my PowerPoint presentation, please. So what I'm going to share with you is the magnificent biodiversity of an area which is, I made a tiny calculation while I was in a plane. The Richtersveld is probably around 3 to 4%, the size of the, is it called state or province of California? So the state of California. So about 3 to 4% the size of the state of California. And we have more species of plants than the state of California. The average annual rainfall varies between less than 1 inch per year on average to the high mountains at about 9 inches per year annually. So it's extremely dry. The temperatures are extremely high, and it's an extremely windy part of the world. Yet it is teeming with life. And it all comes down to the geology. And that's why I needed to make this video that ends with the mining and also ends with climate change, because we think succulents are the plants that are highly or most adapted for harsh conditions like heat, drought, and things like that. But many of them are actually really only adapted to the conditions they are exposed to at the moment. And the slightest changes that is happening already, and I'm sure not only in Southern Africa, but in many other parts of the world, are pushing them past the point of surviving. But so, yeah, so let me give you, I just want to see where the arrows are. So firstly, I'm Pieter van Wyk. They call me Guru in the traditional language of the Nama people, which is the indigenous people in the area where I grew up. So I'm from the western, is this on or off? Sorry. I think I must point it in the direction of the computer. Is it? While I'm pushing up and down. And the blue light is it changing on the computer? Oh. But anyway, so while waiting for that, I had this wonderful, while I was chatting with Uncle Brian, I shared a little bit about my ancestry. And this is the beautiful thing of growing up and being born in South Africa. I had my DNA tested in 2014, and it showed that I had Khoisan, which is one of the oldest groups of people on Earth, ancestry, but also I have South American ancestry. And I've got European, Western European ancestry and a lot of the Mediterranean area. So I'm a really lovely mix. My family side, or my mother's side of the family, has been in the Richtersveld since 1830. No one in the family is into botany or plants or science or anything like that. So I'm really the first one in the family. Can I check it now? And I've dedicated my life, even though I'm still very young, I'm only 36 now, but I've dedicated my life to studying the plants of the Richtersveld. I actually started with birds, but then I realized birds are moving around the whole time, so they're too difficult to follow, and plants was really the thing that stuck with me. But life where I am from, so I'm from the little black circle working in the II's Richtersveld Transfrontier Park. So I'm permanently employed by South African National Parks, where I manage a small botanical garden that I established or are the founder of, with a wonderful team that's working with me. They're all local people from the Richtersveld, called the Richtersveld Desert Botanical Garden. And we've officially opened that as the newest botanical garden in South Africa on the 20th of August, 2024. And but the main purpose of the botanical garden and also nursery that we have there is not like a normal town or a city nursery or botanical garden, but it's truly for the science and also for protecting the species. Because as I grew up and as I started realizing more and more that the stuff is disappearing, I also realized that we need to do something. And if it's not possible to protect them in habitat, one of the wonderful ways to protect species is ex situ. So in ex situ collections in a botanical garden form. So just to share how the Richtersveld works, or also known as the Charib. Do you have your lights sorted out? Anyway, so this is a picture showing the average annual rainfall, and you can really see there's this. I'm not used to working with this thing, so I'm just going to come to the screen if that's okay. So you'll see this arid band that comes inland, and then as it becomes more pink from yellow, that's higher rainfall. So unfortunately, this is in millimeters. So I'm not sure how much inches, 100 millimeters is. It's probably around, I think, 9 inches, something like that, 9 or 10 inches. But anyway, so this area that comes into the inland is called the Charib. And the Charib is divided into, oh, that's the wrong way. The Charib is divided in the middle by a range of mountains that literally cuts the west from the east in the area. And east, it's summer rainfall, so it's known as the Eastern Charib. And then west, it's known as the Western Charib. And this goes from South Africa up to Namibia. The Orange River is the black line, and that's the border between South Africa and Namibia. So this is known globally today by scientists as the Charib centers of endemism. And the unique thing about this Charib centers is that to the one side of the center, the Western Charib, it's winter rainfall. And even though it's desert and dry, its climate in winter months very similar to San Francisco. And in the Eastern Charib, it is summer rainfall, which is very highly erratic with thunderstorms that might occur once in 5 up to 20 years. So this is a little bit about how the Charib functions. The other thing that's unique about the Charib centers is, so this is a satellite image, and if you look at this, you can see the geology is off the charts in this part of the world. It's actually the most geological diverse place on the planet. And it's only this tiny little corner on the African continent that is so geological diverse. So in this photo, around about here, is the cutting line of where it's winter rainfall and summer rainfall. But there's something else that's unique about the Charib centers. It's the meeting point of 3 biomes. And it's the Namakuru biome, which is a biome that continues for over, I think, about probably around 8,000 to 9,000 miles, which is massive, and also summer rainfall. And then it's the Succulent Karoo biome, which is the winter rainfall area, and then the Namib Desert biome that comes all the way from Angola down into South Africa. So all of this works perfectly together to create this unique place with this high diversity. And the reason for the diversity is because of having two, even though it's extremely arid, and even though it's extremely hot, and even though it's extremely windy, I mean, I grew up with wind like you cannot believe it. Literally more than 220 days on average a year, it's just wind. And extreme sandstorms, but the heat is probably the worst. It's a lot like Death Valley temperatures in California. But even though it is so harsh, there's over 6,000 species of plants, and this doesn't include lower taxa. If you include bryophytes, mosses, algae, lichens, all those type of things, we're also the capital of lichen diversity on the planet in this extreme harsh area. But all of this diversity comes down to the geology and the perfect placement on the African continent, where the transition from winter to summer rainfall is only about 3 miles. So it's extremely narrow. So yeah, so I would love to share with you, there's basic 3 major things that drives evolution, and I'm sure this is a global thing, but also these 3 elements, heat, wind, and drought, are the 3 things that the plants in the Richtersveld is the most well adapted. And not only plants, other forms of life also. So the rest of my presentation is basically focusing on just showing you about how unique life are adapted in this tiny little corner of the world. So the first thing I would like to share is surviving against the heat. So with you being from the Succulent Society, I'm sure you know the genus Anacampsaros or Avonia, and that many of you have been introduced to this. But the remarkable thing about anakamsaros, so they're really well camouflaged, is if you look where they grow amongst these white rocks or quartz stones. And we've done experiments where we've seen the temperatures about this high above the quartz are on average 3 degrees Celsius lower, cooler than above that. So that's about, I don't know, I think that's about 1 degree, about 10 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that, cooler on average than anything higher than that. So that's one thing. And then the second thing about living amongst quartz is in the morning when the sun rises, quartz stay much cooler longer. So condensation starts to form, and then there's this little trickle of water that happens every now and then off the quartz rock. But Avonias took it to a completely different level to survive against heat. They became like the quartz. So they developed the scales that covers the body and covers the leaves in most species to aid in reflecting heat. And then this beautiful one, this is called Avonia charipensis, and I visited the population for 9 years throughout the year in all seasons before I finally got one to flower. And the reason why I've been missing it is I realized on that day the flower only lasted for an hour. So after opening an hour, and then it was gone. And very cool about them is they normally lying prostrate, and then when they start to flower, the stem would lift up like that, and it stands up like that until the seeds have been dropped, and then they just lie down again. But very cool plants becoming exactly like the quartz and extremely well adapted for surviving heat. Another way to survive the heat is to live subterranean. So we have the highest number of sunken succulent species on Earth. I think there's around 40 or 50 species that completely, from Euphorbiaceae to Azoaceae to Geraniaceae, that completely can disappear underground. But there's some challenges of living underground. And this is the window plant, Fenestraria rapuphylla subspecies ornicata. And it's literally about 10 to 20 meters from my parents' house. There's beautiful populations of these. And there are a lot of benefits of going underground because you can escape the heat of summer, but you can also escape the strong winds, the extreme sandblasting. But how do you get enough sunlight to function as a plant? And what the window plant has done, if you look at the leaves, you'll see they're translucent at the top. And that allows sunlight to shine all the way down into the plant so that it still can do photosynthesis. It's a really difficult English word for me to pronounce. But anyway, so that it can do what it needs to do to survive. And then the next photo is how they look when they flower. So they're really spectacular succulents. Then you can do what the chameleon does, and you can just change your color to regulate your temperatures. The chameleon in the photo and also the one in the video is the Namakwa chameleon, or the desert chameleon, and they're really, really remarkable survivors in the desert. They can fight off Cape Cobra, which would kill a human within 10 minutes after biting you. And they fight off crows. It's really difficult for a crow to catch them. But if you look at the photo on the top, you'll see it's raising its legs. It's trying to put its body as high as possible above the sand because of the heat of the sand. And it's as pale as possible. And if you look at the bottom photo, you will see the shaded side, the body is white. And the sunny side, the body is dark. So it's a cold morning. So you can tell the weather by looking at the chameleon. But what about the plant? What about the ability of a plant to become like a chameleon and change its color? So this tiny little shrub or herb, Forskurua, and there's 2 species in the Richtersveld, Forskurua candida and Heruruensis. What they do is, so in a photo on, let me see, on your left, my right, you see the leaves are nice and dark green, and that's a cool day. So when it's cold, the dark green side of the leaf turns towards the sun. But then if temperature starts to go up and it becomes the warm, the leaf curls up and it shows this white, bright white underneath part towards the sun. And it's really cool to do a time lapse on these because they're just doing this the whole time, like the chameleons changing their color to reflect the heat of the sun. And because of that, it's very, very common and super successful with surviving all across all of the Gariep or Richtersveld. And then, of course, we've got a lot of interesting insects. And I mean, if you live close to the sand and the sand is warm enough to cook an egg in it, you can just imagine for a plant, an insect, or anything to survive. So these beetles, we call them toktoki because the males, when they call a female, they knock on a stone. And the male that knocks the hardest will get the female. And he would sit for days and knocking for a female from somewhere to walk, hopefully to find him. But they are just stunningly evolved, stunningly adapted to survive in the desert. So if we run, especially in the desert, we overheat. Our bodies just can't be like a cheetah. After a few minutes of running, we want to die. But these, they actually survive by keeping on running. So they look like they're on ecstasy the whole time. They're just going up and down, up and down, up and down. And it's to stay cool. But there's something else that's also very unique about the species of beetle. They belong to the Tenebrioid order. They used to have wings. And somehow in the line of evolution, this thing of these beetles, they found out that let's not fly anymore, but let's exchange the wings for a breathing mechanism. So on the side, they don't breathe through their mouth, they breathe through little holes on the side of the body, so no moisture can escape the body. And underneath the wings are a little sieve. The moment any air goes out of the body, any moisture is caught in that sieve, and it never can leave the body. So they're really, really amazingly adapted for the desert environment. And there's over 30 species that's known in the Richtersveld alone, and 22 species that's known in the Namib Desert dunes. The other way of surviving the heat, obviously, is, or the easy other way to survive the heat is just live at night, like geckos. And we only discovered in 2016 that where I live is the highest gecko diversity on the planet. And these are just some of the beautiful geckos. The one in the up corner and the left, that's called Gogia gemula, and gemula meaning small gem, because on the African continent, it's the only Gogia species that has bright colors on it, and it's got full of this bright yellow spots. But yeah, so the gecko diversity is crazy, and not only with geckos, but even some succulent plants, they flower only at night in my part of the world. And when you go out at night, especially in the warm time of the year, it's remarkable the amount of life that there is actually. But most people are moving around in the area during the day, and that because of that, they think, well, it's depleted of life. I actually did a little, oh, are you, or is it me? The video I'm going to get, we'll get to that one now. So I made a comparison when I was in the Netherlands, and I looked at the amount of reptiles found in the Richtersveld. And the Richtersveld, where I'm from, is 0.01% the size of Europe. And in that 0.01% size of Europe, in the Richtersveld, is more species of reptile than all of Europe. So it's extremely, extremely high in reptile diversity. The park where I work, in that park alone, is 67 species of reptile, of which 6 are adders, and 3 species of cobra that will kill you within 10 to 15 minutes. And one wouldn't think of the desert as that's me. One wouldn't think of the desert as a place that is a place for amphibians, but it's actually, is it you again? But anyway, there's a video that I have to play of the frog at the bottom. It's really cool. So there's 11 species of amphibian where I'm from. I promise it's not me changing. Or but the other thing that you maybe can do is just to go out of the presentation and play it. If it doesn't work, then you can just you can Google world cutest frog. Do you think it will work? I think we'll just leave it. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So I don't want to keep you up too long. So this 3 frog species, the reason why I shared this, and I want to share about ways that life survive against drought. So the one on the top corner in the left, that's called the Namakwa Blikslander, which means knocking on a tin, because when they call, it sounds exactly like knocking on a tin. And then there's the paradise toad. When that is fully grown, it's the size of my thumbnail. So it's a tiny, tiny little frog. And then we've got the desert rain frog, which if you put it in water, it will drown. A frog that can't swim at all. And but the remarkable thing about these frogs, the two on the top, hibernated for 5 years up until 2023 without any food and water, and they survived. And they broke the record for what we knew on Earth of how long frogs can survive. And what the two top species do is in the high mountains, they're really, really rare. They're also in the IUCN of red list species as endangered species. What they do is they form a saliva or a slime around the body. They lock all moisture inside. They go deep into crevices of rocks where it's cool and dark. And there they sit and they just wait for the rain to come. And then the Namakwa rain frog or the desert rain frog that's found on the coastal plains, every night when the fog comes out, then they're active and they make a little foam ball in plants, in the succulent vegetation in which they lay their eggs. And all three species, what's super, super cool, especially the top two species, if there's a puddle of water and the water lasts for 2 months, the tadpoles will remain tadpoles for 2 months. But if the water is only water for a week, the tadpoles will turn into frogs within a week. So they're so amazing adapted. And it didn't work now to show this, but what you can do is if you Google, I mean, this is super cool to see this. If you Google the world's cutest frog, this frog in the bottom went viral. I mean, we have I'm pretty sure the Richtersveld has the only frog on Earth that's ever gone viral on social media. And it's because of this, the stress call that it makes. And it got shared in 1 week. This is already about 15 years ago. But within the first week of sharing it on YouTube, it got shared over 20 million times. And now it's been shared a couple of 100 million times. So do Google world's cutest rain frog. So another way of surviving the drought is in the form of seed. And also to survive the heat. But the ice plants, which I'm sure a lot of you know about, or Azoaceae or Mesembranthaceae, they really take surviving drought through the form or in the form of seeds to the next level, like the Scirrhidopsis hare. And what these plants, I don't know if any of you know about the mechanism of the ice plants of the fruits, but they've got the seeds inside the fruits, and then they close with little doors. And the moment it rains, on the side of the doors, so these little things here, they're called opening bodies. And what they do is they suck in water when it's raining, they swell up, and it pushes the door open. And then if a raindrop lands right in the middle in here, there's fine seed under these membranes. If the drop falls in the middle of that, it shots the seeds out, and it can disperse, a raindrop can disperse the seed up to 1.5 meters from the mother plant. But the problem is and then when it's dry, the opening bodies, they just shrink again, and it closes the door, and the seeds that's left are protected until the next rains come. But the problem is, what if the rains doesn't come, and all of the seeds were dispersed? Then it has second type of seeds, which is these very large seeds. It's the only species that does this. And they are stuck in the fruit, and the whole fruit has to rot away, which might take decades before those seeds would germinate. So it's got a really nice backup. And then another way to survive the drought is, or dry spells, is in the form of seeds, but also being annual. So our annual diversity from succulent annuals to herbaceous annuals are absolutely remarkable, and it's very rare. We had a super bloom, which you can Google in 2023, and it was the biggest display of wildflowers on the planet for the year 2023, and it was right in my backyard, which was one of the most amazing things to experience, but also the first time in my life I saw it. So images like this is really something you see once in 20 to 30 years, and then once in a lifetime there would be this super blooms. The other thing that life has to survive in the Charib or the Richtersveld is wind. So imagine being hit by stones the size of a watermelon at 150 miles per hour. It will kill you instantly. And the Gharib and also the whole Namib Desert is really one of the windiest places after the Arctics on the planet. And a combination of extreme gale force winds and drought means sandblasting, extreme sandblasting. I had thousands of dollars of damage to my vehicle from just 1 hour driving in a sandstorm, destroying the windscreen, destroying the paint on the side the wind was coming off, just 1 hour of exposure in a sandstorm. You also can't walk with if shorts or anything like that. Nothing can be open. When there's really, really strong winds in the Namib Desert, it hurts like needles going into your skin. Now imagine being this tiny little plant that can't move. You're just sitting there and you're daily exposed to this extreme wind. So one of the cool things about the Richtersveld, it's got the highest number of Samophoras or Samophytes on Earth. There's 27 species that we know of, from monocots all the way to dicotyledonea, so from bulbs to ice plants. Like this very special or beautiful ice plant, this is called Samophora modesta, which is a beautiful scientific name because it's truly a modest plant. But if you look at the leaves, you'll see they're completely covered with sand. And what species have learned to do to survive against the sand is they make a glue around their body and then sand attached to that, and then they literally put on a little jacket to create a windbreaker against the sandblasting in the wind. So it's a very, very cool mechanism. And then the next one, this is a monocot called Stromaria bidentata, exactly the same mechanism it's using to survive against sandblasting. And this is also my most favorite plant on Earth that I enjoy the most. It's endemic to the farm that used to belong to my grandmother. There's only a couple of thousand of them found in the area, about 5 times the size of this room. So it's got a minute distribution, which is also a common thing for the Richtersveld. It's got the highest percentage of localized endemics, meaning that they only occur in one tiny little spot or habitat for any habitat on the planet. It outcompetes the Amazon, the Congo, Madagascar, and all of the large hotspots in the world in localized endemics. But so something very unique about the Stromaria bidentata is it's in the Amaryllidaceae family, and it's got fleshy seeds. And having fleshy seeds that needs to germinate immediately is a huge challenge if you're living in a place that's extremely hot, extremely dry, and not even to mention the amount of wind. So what this beautiful plant does, so there's a photo of the flower. I've only seen it twice in flower in my life. It's extremely rare. The leaves come up every year after winter rains, but if the rain doesn't fall at the right time in summer, they won't flower. But what it does is, so there's the seeds. When the seeds are ready to germinate, the whole mother stem bends down and it pushes its own seed into the sand and it plants its seed to protect it against dying from drought, heat, and sandblasting. So a very special plant. And then this little spider, it's a little bit out of focus. This is an organism surviving against heat to a complete different level. So what is the chance of the first time in your life picking up a spider and it's new to science? And this is the beauty of where I live in the world. I've discovered over 100 new species of plants in the Richtersveld, over 160 in Angola. The first time in my life, I collected a spider specimen for the University of Pretoria, which is this buckspur spider in the photo. It was new to science. And I thought it was something else they were looking for. But this remarkable spider is the size of a match head. So it's tiny, tiny. This is a female. And she builds a nest with 4 little doors, trap doors, that's sticky on the edges. And from the doors, there's a little thread that goes to the middle and then down about 10 centimeters, which I don't know how much inches that is now. But it's about that deep. It's about 4 inches that it goes down into the ground, the little threads from the doors. And if an ant gets stuck on the doors, she would feel the vibration and then run upside down, go with her feet, catch the ant, pull it down, and go down. So they predominantly, the diet is sugar ants. But the remarkable thing is that the temperature underneath the doors can fluctuate between about 130 up to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. So I assume that's quite hot. Um, um, and then at the bottom where she's sitting, it's like constantly around 90 up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think is still quite hot. And they're most active at the warmest time of the day. So it's still unknown to science why. Maybe the ants are struggling from heat stroke or something. I don't know why the spider have chosen to be active at daytime. And very cool about it is, so the female she would never move except for if conditions become too extreme within years of drought. Then she would abandon the nest and find another female and then build a nest close to that female to cluster together to prevent population collapse. And they live for a year, and after a year, she sacrifices herself for the babies. She raises the babies by giving food to them, and then the babies would eat her, and they would eat the nest. And if it's a female, they would spread about a meter to a meter and a half away from where the mother's nest was. So yeah, so it's a really, really remarkable species in the desert, absolutely fantastically adapted for surviving the heat. My nickname is Ant, or Mir, which like the little ant walking around. And the reason is for always climbing and always being busy. And I was one time doing field work, and I was having a cup of tea, and I put my tea bag between my feet, and there was a lot of ants that was sitting around the tea bag drinking tea with me. So it was really lovely watching these ants, but while looking at them, enjoying tea with me, I saw this one ant just quickly moving up and down, and it just didn't look kosher. And I thought, no, you're not an ant. And I caught it, and it turned out to be the male of the bucksworth spider, which looks like a whole different creature. And it's got two long front legs that acts as antenna of ants, and it scents itself with the scent of the ants. And when it gets close to an ant, it touches the antenna of the ant, and it's chatting with the ant. But the moment the ant is alone, it snatches it, run away, eats it up, and then comes back. So yeah, they're really well adapted. So yeah, and then something else that's also remarkably that I thought would be lovely to show with you, and I think this is something that might be completely new. I asked Mr. Brian if he knows it. This is the Namakwa rock flower or clipblom, called Pias mollis, and one of the ways to survive the heat, obviously in a place like the Richtersveld, is if you live on rocks, and if you live on the shaded side of rocks or completely in the shade. But staying on the rocks is a huge challenge. So what this beautiful plant does, the moment the seeds are ready to be set, the flower turns 180 degrees around, and it pushes the flower towards the rock. And if there's a crevice and it's lucky, it pushes it into the crevice, and then plants its own seeds in the crevice. So yeah, that's a little bit about surviving the desert. If you want to come to the desert, and then I would just quickly like to share some of the beautiful novelties from the Richtersveld that it's well known for. Like the March lily, they always flower in March if the rain fell at the right time. Amucharis longifolia, those are giant. The amble is about this size. So really spectacular plant. This is the Umsberg lily. They're about this high above the ground. This huge cluster of white flowers. They were only discovered in 2011, and thousands of them on this one mountain. I've only seen it also once in my life in flowers. It's quite rare to see it in flower. Then the Richtersveld is well known for the Pachypodium namakwanum, or the half-mens. They're always watching towards the north, and they have very, very great significance in the local tribes in the Richtersveld that believes that there was a war hundreds of years ago, and it forced the ancestors to come to the south. And when they came to the Orange River and they crossed the river, everyone that looked north to the ancestral land turned into the half-mens and are forever looking north. And the name half-mens means half human. So when the sun sets especially, and there's silhouettes on the margins of the mountains, then they really give this odd appearance. And they look a little bit like cactus, but they're definitely not cactus. It's in the Apocynaceae family. Oh, another thing I must mention, in cultivation, they grow about 0.5 up to 1 centimeter per year. But in habitat, that only happens in exceptional rain years, so like every 5 to 10 years. So there are truly some of them that's well over 1,000 years of age. And in just the past 10 years, more than 90% of the population, boom, gone. And they will go extinct probably within the next decade without intervention. These are just some of the beautiful rare endemic bulbs. We've got 169 species of bulb belonging to the Hyacinthaceae family alone. So the Lachenalia you see in that family. And Lachenalias, there's over 40 species of Lachenalia in the Richtersveld alone. And then Iridaceae is extremely, extremely abundant with beautiful Moraias and Romolias, and this extremely beautiful Gladiolus deserticola. It's one of the most rarest Gladiolus species found in the world. And then one of the most beautiful plants, I wanted to share a video of this also, but you can check it on YouTube. 2 days before coming here to America, they were in flower. And I quickly went up the mountain because I couldn't miss this opportunity. So this year, for the first time since 2005, the Richtersveld, so in 20 years, the Richtersveld received sufficient and good rain at the right time for species like this to go into super bloom. So I saw them once before in flower in 2014, but that was only 3 plants in the population that flowered. So this is called Amaryllis paradisicola. And it's the only, after the belladonna, which is very common across the world in cultivation, this one was only discovered in 1996. So, and that over 1,000 kilometers away from the other species, and it's endemic to a single cliff in the Richtersveld. I measured some of the flowers in centimeters, it's 94 centimeters, so this high above the ground. Huge, huge, beautiful plant endemic to a single, there's fewer than 1,000, that's the natural population. And the cliff they grow on is about the size of this room. That's the global distribution of Amaryllis paradisicola. This is Moraia flexicolus. It's found in the area about this side of the seeds. That's its natural distribution. Only this tiny little spot, extreme high soil specialists, that we've tested the pH levels and it was 7 at the spot, which is quite poisonous for a lot of other plants. And this is the first new species I ever discovered in my life when I was 11 years old. But I only found out it was new to science when I was 19. It's a bulbina from the Olgat River. I still haven't described that because the genus bulbina is quite a taxonomic mess, and one has to first sort that out before describing new species. The first time I went into the amphitheater, which is this huge giant pothole in a mountain the size of a football field, cut by a river in Richtersveld, I found this beautiful Heliophila. It's in the Brassicaceae or the cabbage family. But it's a fantastic perennial plant, beautiful when it goes in flower, and it grows up to almost twice my length, hanging down cliffs. So it's been described now, it's called now Heliophila pseudoeximia. So that's one of my other new discoveries. And on my arm, on this arm, I have a tattoo. So this was my first plant at the age of 18 that I described scientifically together with the bulb specialist in South Africa. And I got to, it was my first plant I got to name. And I published it as Esperanza eremophila, meaning desert friend or desert lover. But yeah, the first time I went to the tip of the highest mountain in Richtersveld, I discovered this beautiful Esperanza bulb. And then we've got the strange. There's some very, very awkward plants in the Richtersveld, not even to mention the names. Well, I actually am going to mention them. But like this little orchid, that's the flower. The flower actually starts around like that, and then eventually they turn 180 degrees to make this perfect little seed for a bee, a specific species of bee to pollinate them. Other strange plants are Larelicia. And because of their strange appearances, they've got the most coolest local names, varying from town to town. So some towns it's called Hondebal, which means dog testicle. In other towns, they called horse para some or horse something. I won't say the second word. And they look very much the same without flowers, but as you can see in the flowers, they're spectacular. And there's 7 species in the Richtersveld alone. And then in the rest of Southern Africa, there's only 3 other species. So we not only for this genus, but for Asclepiadaceae, the Richtersveld is the center of evolution on the planet, with the most species found there. But one of the names that in one of the towns in the Richtersveld is Oma Pram, and when you translate that, it's grandmother's breast. And I didn't understand why did the people of Exteenfontein and Richtersveld call this plant grandmother's breast until I found this specimen. But yeah, so they're very cool, cool succulents from my part of the world. Then you were talking about earlier about Portulacaria afra, about making a donation of that. But in the Richtersveld, there's 4 species of Portulacaria. And of those 4 species, this is by far the most interesting plant. Well, it's an absolute botanical wonder. So this is Portulacaria arimiana. And without a person in the picture, it doesn't look like much. But if you add a person, it's an absolute botanical wonder. No one understands why on earth would this plant go through that extent of energy to produce that long peduncle. It's not that it has a problem with competition with pollinators. I mean, there's not much going on around it. And the global, there's 3 populations, and the combined distribution of it is about 1 square mile. That's its global population, but the absolute beautiful plant. And then one of the sister species, also endemic to the Richtersveld, called Portulacaria pygmaea, this tiny, tiny little dwarf pork bush. Over 40,000 of them have been poached over the past 5 years alone for the bonsai trade in Asia. And that's going extinct. And luckily, then this one is not being poached yet, and they're quite easy to grow from cuttings. And then I wouldn't even mention the local names of this. I can just say it starts with open, and that's it. I can't mention more than that. But yeah, we've got some very funky, really odd parasitic plants found in the Richtersveld area. So yeah, that's in a nutshell a little bit about my part of the world. Thank you. I don't know if there's any questions. And then yeah, I think